What if the most powerful force behind global influence today isn't talent, intelligence, or even fame, but the ability to control attention without ever seeming desperate for it? What if Kim Kardashian's real power isn't her image, her businesses, or her controversies, but the strategy beneath them all? Because when you strip away the noise, the glamour, and the headlines, what you're left with isn't chaos, it's structure. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Kim Kardashian didn't accidentally become one of the most recognizable people on the planet. She didn't stumble into relevance and somehow managed to stay there for decades in an industry designed to discard women quickly. Her power wasn't built through one big moment. It was built through thousands of small, calculated decisions about timing, silence, exposure, and restraint. Have you ever wondered how someone can be constantly talked about without constantly explaining themselves? The foundation of Kim's strategy is understanding attention as a resource, not a reward. Most people treat attention like validation. They chase it, react to it, defend themselves within it. Kim learned early that attention behaves more like currency. It flows toward confidence, consistency, and emotional ambiguity. Instead of trying to correct every narrative about her, she allowed narrative to exist without interference. That single choice changed the power dynamic. When you don't rush to explain yourself, you force others to fill the silence. And in that space, curiosity grows. One of the most misunderstood aspects of her strategy is restraint. Kim is often accused of oversharing, yet she reveals remarkably little about what actually matters. You see aesthetics, environments, surface-level moments. You rarely see uncertainty, internal conflict, or strategic thinking. This isn't accidental. Emotional opacity keeps people projecting, and projection creates attachment. When audiences don't fully understand someone, they stay engaged, trying to decode them. Have you noticed how the most discussed figures are often the least emotionally transparent? Another pillar of her global power is timing. Kim rarely moves first. She watches. She waits. She studies shifts in culture, technology, and audience behavior before stepping into them. When she launches something, it feels inevitable, as if it was always meant to exist. That illusion is powerful. It makes her presence feel natural rather than intrusive. People resist being sold to, but they rarely resist inevitability. Her brand expansions follow the same logic. Instead of jumping into every opportunity, she builds ecosystems. Each venture reinforces the others without competing for attention. Beauty feeds fashion. Fashion feeds lifestyle. Lifestyle feeds cultural relevance. Cultural relevance feeds everything else. This isn't diversification for safety. It's alignment for dominance. Everything points back to one core asset, recognizability without exhaustion. What makes her strategy especially effective is her relationship with controversy. Kim doesn't avoid it, but she doesn't wrestle with it either. Controversy becomes background noise rather than a crisis. She understands that public outrage burns fast when it isn't fed. By refusing to escalate emotionally, she allows time to do the work for her. Time is her most underestimated ally. While others scramble to repair image damage, she lets the cycle move on. And it always does. There's also a deeper psychological layer at play. Kim positions herself as both aspirational and familiar. She exists in a space where people can admire her without feeling alienated by her. Her aesthetic may be extreme, but her emotional tone is neutral. She doesn't speak down. She doesn't intellectualize her power. She presents success as accessible, even when it isn't. That balance keeps her audience wide rather than niche. Do you think global power comes from being exceptional, or from making others feel included in your exception? Another critical part of her strategy is adaptability without apology. Kim evolves constantly, but she never frames change as correction. She doesn't explain reinventions. She simply moves. This signals confidence. When you don't justify your evolution, people assume it's deserved. This is a subtle but powerful psychological cue. Explanation invites debate. Movement ends it. Midway through this story, take a moment to reflect. How often do you feel pressure to explain yourself, defend your choices, or justify your growth? And what would change if you stopped? If this kind of strategic thinking around power, influence, and visibility resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective adds to the conversation more than you think. Kim's mastery also lies in her understanding of platform behavior. She doesn't fight algorithms. She collaborates with them. She adapts her presence to how people consume content, not how she wants them to. Short attention spans, visual-first engagement, emotional neutrality. She doesn't demand depth from the audience. She lets depth emerge over time. That patience compounds. One of the quietest but most important elements of her strategy is self-containment. Kim doesn't rely on public approval for internal stability. She doesn't appear emotionally dependent on praise or threatened by criticism. This emotional insulation is rare, and it's what allows her to survive cycles that would collapse others. When someone isn't emotionally reactive, they become very hard to control. Even her visibility follows a rhythm. Periods of saturation are followed by withdrawal. Withdrawal creates absence. Absence rebuilds demand. Demand restores leverage. This cycle keeps her from becoming background noise. Many public figures fail not because they lose relevance, but because they never leave space for it to return. Her global power isn't about being loved. It's about being unavoidable. Love fluctuates. Attention doesn't. She positions herself where cultural conversations intersect: identity, beauty, ambition, transformation. These topics never go out of style. By anchoring herself to them, she ensures longevity without needing constant reinvention. What's perhaps most striking is that her strategy doesn't rely on mystery alone, nor exposure alone, but on balance. Too much mystery alienates. Too much exposure exhausts. Kim operates in the narrow space between the two. That's where influence becomes durable. As you think about her rise, ask yourself this: how much of power is about visibility, and how much is about control? How much of influence comes from speaking, and how much comes from choosing when not to? Kim Kardashian's global power isn't loud. It isn't chaotic. It's patient, structured, and emotionally controlled. And that's why it lasts. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on fame, power, and strategy in the modern world, leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe for more deep dives like this. The conversation doesn't end here.